My name is NonStopAntonio, and today it's time to talk about another episode of Superman and Lois, and today is episode 4. This show never fails to have fantastic episodes, really adding to each character, and I can't wait to talk about what happened during this, because we got some cool Easter eggs, as well as some cool setup for the rest of the season. So let's jump into my breakdown for Superman and Lois, episode 4. Welcome to NonStopAntonio, where I talk about everything nerdy. I love Marvel, DC, and anime, and if you do too, I hope you enjoy this video. Right off the bat, this episode was intense, from Jon Henry Irons all the way to Clark and Lois just being badass parents. I loved how the show started off with Clark and Jordan going in and being Superboy and Superman, saving all the people from the forest fire, which every time I see Jordan be Superboy and just be a superhero in general, I really like seeing that. And I cannot wait to see him get a proper superhero suit, because in this, he finally gets one. Hopefully when they do reveal him to the public, he'll be donning the House of L, as well as being called Superboy. And one of the things we learned from this episode is that you do not F with Superman's family, because he'll come for you. I love how badass Clark was when he was defending his family from Candice's father, and how he just didn't move when the dude hit him. Didn't even act like he was weak or anything. He just took the hit and then slammed him into the table and threatened him to not come near his family again, because you do not mess with Superman. And now all of Smallville knows that Clark Kent is secretly a badass. But let's jump back into the Superboy stuff, because they've been teasing it this entire season since it started. Well, for the first 4 episodes, that Jordan has to worry about revealing his identity to the world. In the first episode, Clark got mad at him because he almost revealed himself. And I'm assuming that means people just don't know that Superman is running around with someone else that's not Steel. But after they stopped the forest fire, turns out a satellite image from the DOD caught Jordan with his hood down, so you can see his puffy hair. And I like how Sam's like, well, you need to get a haircut. It's the only way to keep your identity. However, luckily in the end, they decide to go against that, and Sam gives him a brand new suit with some goggles. Now, the cool part about this is that it's his prototype suit, so it's not going to be anything flashy. It looks like it's just going to be gray and black, something just to hide his identity. Plus, Sam gives Jordan his father's goggles from when he served in World War II. Now, I'm thinking these goggles could be a tease for the X-ray glasses that Superboy uses in the comics, or it could be a reference to his black sunglasses that he wears as well. And we did get the Superboy suit with the Bizarro version of Jonathan Kent last season, which I don't think they'll give Jordan the exact same suit. I think there's a good chance he might get the newer updated suit that Jon wears nowadays, something a little bit more updated. Or, he could be getting a variation of all the Superboy suits together, which I think will be pretty cool. Hopefully by the end of the season, we'll get a new one from the Fortress of Solitude with the House of L on it. But speaking of suits, it turns out that the gauntlets that knocked down Superman last week was tech created by this Earth's Jon Henry Irons. And this just sets up the whole plot for where our Jon Henry Irons is going this season, because he goes to see his doppelganger's sister when he's like, oh, I'm from another world. And right away, she's like, the square one? And I'm like, so she put it together really quickly that there are doppelgangers from other planets. And during this whole interaction, we learned that they were called the Wonder Twins, which I'm 100% sure is a reference to the Wonder Twins from DC Comics. Obviously not the same ones, but just a nice nod to them. And then we had Bruno Mannheim watching them the entire time and dragging Jon Henry Irons to him so that he could talk to him and be like, yeah, I know you're from another Earth. Turns out Bruno Mannheim has known this entire time that Steel is Jon Henry Irons, because the Jon Henry Irons of this Earth always wanted to be a hero. So very interesting how they set this up, and how he turns around and says Boss Moxie, who was the Intergang's leader, was killed by Lex Luthor. And in the comics, Boss Moxie is Bruno Mannheim's father and also the founder of Intergang. So what he's trying to do here is make Jon Henry Irons think that he's not part of Intergang because Lois has been digging into him, and that Lex Luthor is the one that's behind everything, which makes me wonder if he's actually behind Intergang or if it's something completely different. Because what could end up happening is that Lex Luthor had taken over Intergang in this universe as well, and he's been running it from prison. And then Bruno Mannheim has been doing something completely different so he could take back Intergang. And with Lex Luthor killing Boss Moxie, this could be a twist on the comics, where Lex Luthor put Boss Moxie in charge of Intergang until Boss Moxie was killed by Superboy Prime during the Battle of Metropolis. So I'm interested in what they're doing there, because I feel like it's still all tying back to Intergang, but Bruno Mannheim and Lex Luthor are very tied to this plot, especially because we've been getting Lex Luthor mentioned almost every episode since the show started. It's just a matter of time until he shows up. And I like the badass moment in this episode we get from Jon, because Bruno Mannheim threatens him because Darlene's strapped to a bomb, and Jon just jumps out the window, gets his suit, and saves her with seconds to spare, and then flies to Bruno and strangles him, which was just such a badass moment. We got a badass moment from Clark this episode, as well as Jon, and they both are threatening in their own ways. And plus, we find out during this how they got the blood of Superman, and it turns out the DOD thinks it was secure, but someone got in there. It must mean there's a traitor, and I love how Superman destroys all the vials because it's not safe to have Superman's blood. Even if it's a life-threatening thing like last season where he almost died to Allie, and they need his blood, they're not gonna have it because they could just clone him or do a bunch of awful things with that. Since I mentioned Clark being a badass, let's talk about that amazing scene with both Clark and Lois during this episode because they both had great moments being protective parents and standing up for their kids. And I like how Lois gets mad at the kids for going to steal the truck. Even though they were doing the right thing, she still gets mad at them because Jonathan could have been hurt and Natalie could have been hurt. I mean, Jordan probably would have been fine, but they're still risking the others getting hurt in the long run. But I love when she finds out that Candice's father was the one that decked Jonathan. She goes over to threaten him, like, stay away from my kids. But the dude thinks he's all badass, you know, tries to pull a gun on her. And Lois has dealt with worse people, so Lois Lane will not back down because she is Lois Lane, which I think is really showing her character. Even going through chemo, suffering cancer, she's gonna stand there and fight for her kids, and she's not gonna back down. And I love once Clark finds out, he finds Candice's father, goes to the diner, and I love when Clark tries to talk to him, and he's like, let's step outside. Candice's father just pushes on him, and Clark doesn't move. He does not move. He just stands his ground. He doesn't act like the weakling that Clark Kent seems to be. He just stands his ground and then slams him into the bar, which just makes him look so goddamn menacing and intimidating. Clark Kent just seems like that nerdy guy who runs around town. Like, he's a little bit stumbly. He's not as well coordinated, but as soon as it comes time to protect his family, he's gonna stand up and he's gonna use his Superman powers to scare the shit out of people. And I love how he scared Candice's father to run out of town because that's just a badass moment. And I just love Kyle looked at him like, damn. So, you know, now the people of Smallville know that Clark Kent is no one to be effed with. Absolutely fantastic episode, and I love how it ended where we have Lois wanting to go get treatment at Bruno Mannheim's facility for her cancer so that she can keep an eye on him. And now Bruno Mannheim is going to go see her and treat her so he can keep an eye on her. So they're both going to be watching each other, and something bad is most likely going to happen, especially because Bruno Mannheim does not want to take out Lois because they want to know what she wants first. And I'm very interested to seeing what happens during the season. I feel like there's still so much to uncover, and I can't wait to see what happens. I can't wait to get Superboy in a proper suit. I can't wait to see what other things Bruno Mannheim has up his sleeve, and for Lex Luthor to finally make his appearance. What did you think of this episode and the little Easter eggs within it? Let me know down in the comments. I hope you liked this breakdown. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It helps the channel out a lot. Check out my Flash breakdowns if you want to see stuff about the Flash. And DC Titans will be returning soon, so make sure you stay tuned for that as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.